That brings to item 11. Representative Fritts, House Bill 2082. You've got a motion and a second on the bill, sir. And I'm looking at two amendments here. I have 14746 and 17852. We can take those up one at a time. So 14746, and you've got a motion and a second on that one, sir. If you go ahead and just let us know what that does.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and committee. Good morning. I appreciate your time on this. I'll speak to both amendments briefly, if you don't mind us, Mr. Chairman. The amendment that makes the bill on 14746, there has been a friendly, what I consider a friendly amendment offered in 17852.
Okay.
That makes some clarifications to the bill.
Members, I have a motion and a second on 17852 as well. Okay, very good. Go ahead, Representative Fritts.
Thank you again, Mr. Chairman and committee. This legislation makes a change to Title 39, 17, 1307.
Hey, Representative Fritts, let me ask you a quick question.
Yes.
So we're on the amendments. So do these amendments make the bill? Okay.
The first one does.
Okay, very
Mr.
good.
Chairman,
Members,
and the second
do
one.
we want to go ahead and put the amendment, the first amendment, House Amendment 14746 on the bill since it does make the bill? Any objection to that? All right, seeing that, all those in favor of House Amendment 14746, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. All right, now that one's adopted. And let's move down to 17852. What does it do? And you've got a motion and a second on already. So does it make the bill as well, or?
Mr. Chairman, 17852 simply adds a sentence to the end of my first amendment of
Okay.
what is now the bill.
Okay, very good. So it's not a substantive change?
No.
Okay, members, are we ready? We want to go ahead and adopt that House Amendment. All right, all those in favor of House Amendment 17852, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Ayes have it. And without objection, we'll roll those amendments into one. And now we're back on the bill as amended, and you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your patience with me. This bill, as amended, simply deletes the phrase lawfully carries a handgun pursuant to 17-1307 and replaces it with is not prohibited from possessing a firearm. The other changes made are cleanups, if you will, and result in the change of the bill. Why is this legislation needed? Currently, our law states that someone who carries with the intent to go armed, a firearm or a club, commits an offense. This is in direct opposition to our Second Amendment and to the U.S. Constitution, which states the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Over the years, we've added exceptions to the code in subsections E and G. However, we're infringing upon the rights of citizens to bear arms because the citizens must still appear in court and prove that they meet these exceptions. Recent rulings by the Supreme Court have also affirmed this right to bear arms. By continuing to make carrying a firearm an offense, we're allowing the narrative of guns are evil to overshadow the protected constitutional rights. Although it has become trivialized, the statement that guns do not kill people, people kill people is true. It is impossible to legislate what is in the heart of an evil person. Someone who has hatred and violence in their heart is not going to be concerned about whether they are committing an offense by carrying a firearm. What our current statutes do, then, is hold criminally accountable the law-abiding citizen. Beginning with the Declaration of Independence, our founders enumerated what they believed to be creator-endowed rights. In the Declaration, they described life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and they went on to say in that Declaration that the role of government was to secure these rights. What I offer you today is intended to do that. Our U.S. and Tennessee Constitutions provide more detail on exactly what those rights are and what constitutes liberty. The right to keep and bear arms is closely tied to the idea of self-preservation, the first law of nature. And I would submit to you that government does not have the authority to dictate by what means someone can protect themselves. I'll ask you briefly, if you would, Chairman and Committee, to go with me on just a little bit of a journey that I've been on in life. I would ask you to go with me to the Texas border of last summer. I would ask you to hear the words of those elected officials in McAllen, Texas, who said to many of us that there was a lawless state at the border, who said to many of us that those cartels that we have allowed to come into this nation were knocking on the doors of Texans' homes and demanding that they leave. These are armed units of foreign adversaries. I would ask you to consider that we just heard this week from one of our congressmen that between 20 and 25,000 aged 25 to 35 military-aged Chinese nationals have entered the United States. I too think that's a sad thing. And I think that to infringe or restrict the rights and criminalize the rights of the law-abiding Tennessean to defend themselves at this point in time or any other point in time is the wrong thing for us to do, and we do not have the authority to do so. I would offer to you that the recent report of a knock on a door at a home in Texas where the criminal cartel instructed the homeowner that they must get rid of their dog. The dog was disrupting their trafficking activities. The owner of the home refused to do that and soon found that their dog had been killed. What I offer to you, these graphic examples, my friends, my colleagues, my fellow citizens, is that we have in this nation, and by our founders and our Constitution, the right to self-preservation. And that is closely tied with our Second Amendment right. I would offer that it is improper for us.
It's been 5 minutes, so if you can go ahead and
I'll
just
close
wrap it up.
one
Thank you.
sentence. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would offer that it's important for us to defend the rights of our Tennesseans. We are each oath-bound to do so, and I would ask for your support and answer any of your questions. Thank you,
Very
Mr.
good. And that was
Chairman.
right on 5 minutes. I gave about a 20-second heads up there, so we'll pour our rules there. Members, do we have any questions for, excuse me, folks, if we're trying to conduct business here, and I'm about to call on some folks that's probably going to agree with some of you. So, Representative Powell, you're recognized.
I guess I'm at a loss for words. You know what? I'm going to pass because I don't think it would be helpful to words that come out of my mouth to feel how I truly feel about what this bill would do and the way it would harm our Tennesseans and our families and our children. If you can come back to me, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative Powell. Sure will. Representative Todd, you recognize, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'm not at a loss for words when it comes to this topic. This is a very serious matter that needs to be corrected. We've had on our books for too many years now restrictions on a basic civil right that Tennesseans have under the U.S. Constitution. And our own Constitution has a violation in that puts the ability of lawmakers to restrict that civil right, and it needs to be removed. And there's an effort to do that right now, and I'm glad to get behind that effort as well as this one. This is a very important bill. As many of you know, I and Chairman Grills on this committee and others have carried similar legislation in the past. And if this doesn't get across the finish line, we will continue to do so because the basic civil rights that the sponsor mentioned just in his opening remarks is undeniable. These rights are unalienable. You can't even give them away. That's been shown in court case after court case, that these basic rights are endowed by our Creator. They are provided by our Creator. Y'all are free to leave. We're trying to conduct business.
Chairman
Thank
Todd,
you, Mr.
Chairman
Chairman.
Todd, I'm going to ask you all just please be respectful. We're being very respectful to you all. Please show that as well. I appreciate that. Thank you. All right, Chairman Todd, you recognize. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. these restrictions on these civil rights have been shown at our highest level of jurisprudence in this country. The Supreme Court has ruled that these restrictions are unconstitutional. And so I applaud the sponsor for trying to get this done, to try to get at least this set of restrictions corrected in our code. 3917, 1307A1 is definitely a violation of the U.S. Constitution and needs to be corrected. So I appreciate you doing this. And Mr. Chairman, at this time, I also request a roll call vote on this bill.
Noted. Thank you. I have Vice Chair Jernigan. I did. Yeah, Vice Chair, you're recognized, sir.
So I want to say a few words. I guess I'll start historically. When you talk about the right to bear arms, I do. Just going to lean forward into this.
There you go.
Okay. I think I'll start historically when the right to bear arms, it was to bear arms at that time meant military service. And that's why it says right to bear arms and there and to be well regulated. And I'm not going to go, I've been through the history of this in this committee a lot, but I'm just going to fast forward to Heller, right, the Supreme Court case in which Scalia made a departure from a traditional of what bear arms meant, and that's fine. He said that you can keep a firearm, a handgun, and a long gun in your home, but after that it would be up to the states to decide. Now, I think a constitutional right and what's constitutional are separate. And for instance, it's constitutional for the state of Tennessee to deregulate, and that's what's happening here. It's also constitutional, for instance, the state of Illinois, who banned semi-automatic firearms, and the U.S. Supreme Court refused to take it up. So it's constitutional. It's constitutional on both fronts. It's not a constitutional right. It's up to the state to decide what's constitutional and what's not for the member. I've heard you say that in your statement that guns don't kill people, but people kill people. That this is true, and unfortunately, we let anybody, all the people, to have access to it. I've heard Representative Warner say that you could put a table out there and put a gun on it, and that gun's not going to kill anyone. However, we'll let anybody in the room go over there and get the gun without a background check, without any kind of mental stability, any kind of training, any kind of firing of the weapon. And now we're going to lower it down to 18 for, and this is where I get concerned with the bill as well. I've had 4 18-year-olds and they can't clean their room, much less I worry that one turns 18 in November and they're still in high school, and now they're allowed to carry, and that's fine, and it's their right. You said it's their lawful right for abiding citizens that carry the weapon, and it's lawful until the day that it's not, and someone cuts them off in traffic or someone pops off in school. And just as my chief did in this police, the chief of police in Nashville told me, he says, we are resolving now everyday conflicts with guns. It used to be a fist fight, and now they're pulling out weapons to decide the fate of folks. And it worries me that to a scenario to where you turn 18, I go to Craigslist, I meet someone in a Walmart parking lot, I buy the weapon, I put it on my shoulder, and now I can go walk down the street with it and never been trained, never fired it. And I get that when you turn 18, you're eligible for the military service, but at least there you're trained on how to use a weapon. And some 18-year-olds don't qualify for the military. And so it's very broad. It bothers me, and I just wanted, and I'm sorry, your office is across the hall from mine, and I should have went over it, and because usually you're very courteous of telling me that you're no on my bills. I should do the same for you, and but thank you for listening to my comments. I really don't have a question for you, but I in the present form, I can't support the bill, but thank you, sir.
Any follow-up, Representative Fritts?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Representative, for your comments. I do treasure and appreciate your friendship, and I'm glad that we are officed across from one another. I would touch on a couple things since you mentioned rulings of the Supreme Court. I would first offer that we do not prosecute crime in advance of its commission in the United States. There has to be a crime before we prosecute against it. To get to the point where that we would restrict because something might be problematic is not an American thing to do. And I would read from New York State Rifle and Pistol Association versus Bruin. And it says, I'm just going to read a couple sentences, Mr. Chairman. In keeping with Heller, we hold that the Second Amendment's plain text covers an individual's conduct. The Constitution presumptively protects that conduct. To justify its regulation, the government may not simply posit that the regulation promotes an important interest. And I think oftentimes that's what we do to justify the restriction of our fellow citizens' liberty, is we posit that it serves an important interest. And we have the court here saying that that is not permissive. I would offer just one other quick comment, and I'll read this. This is from Andrews v. State. The Tennessee Supreme Court likewise held that a statute that forbade openly carrying a pistol, publicly or privately, without regard to time or place or circumstances, and that was in 1871, violated the state constitutional provision which the court equated with the Second Amendment. And that was done so even though the statute did not restrict the carrying of handguns. And so I understand, because we made this change in 1989, up to 1989, this was not an issue in the state of Tennessee. And we made that change, and so it does leave some discomfort, some miscomfort with a change back to what is constitutional. But I would offer to my colleagues and ask for your support, this is the right thing to do.
Okay.
And Vice Chair Jernigan, any follow-up to that?
I'll just follow up real quick.
Go ahead. Take time.
Two things. You cited Bruin.
Yep.
And that's fine. What Bruin was they went in with with handgun permits, and the problem within New York is that they said that you may have a permit or not. It was an arbitrary decision whether they wanted to do it or not. In Tennessee, it's a shall state, so that they were just saying that the permit process was unconstitutional. Doesn't mean that you can't do permits. Or that was really, really narrow. Second, and I'm glad you cited that case. I'll tell you a case, At.Rep versus Tennessee, 1840. The Supreme Court here in Tennessee, the Tennessee Supreme Court justice said, as I mentioned before about bearing arms in military service, is that you could hunt elk, buffalo, deer for 40 years and never bear arms. That's what he said, not me, because it was a military service. And so I tried to not go through the history of it, because it doesn't really matter what the history says after Heller, because Heller changed it all, and we have to abide by what Heller says. Bruin just backed up Heller in a very narrow way as far as the state making the decision, but the state of New York made it, they just had a bad policy. They got cleaned up through Bruin. So I would just, I don't want to have a running debate, but Chairman, thank you so much, and I'm done. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that. Representative Fritts, good? Okay, good deal. Representative Powell, sir, I'm going to circle back to you.
Thank you, Chairman. You know, I feel like we are putting the worship of the gun ahead of the love of people and lives. What we have lost is, in the Constitution, all the talk about the Second Amendment, is the ability to have the pursuit of life, liberty, and happiness. And when our communities are overrun with guns, and we continue in this body to pass legislation to increase the proliferation of guns in our society and our state, we are making Tennesseans much less safe, much less secure. And when you are passing a bill that essentially, even if someone you know is a risk, is a danger, has an ability to do harm, but you're allowing that person to go armed in a very offensive way, in a very scary way. And the way this expands the number of guns from not just handguns, but to long guns and other weapons is ludicrous. And to allow this to even have, for younger people, as my colleague from Davidson County said, who, we know the brain is not fully developed until it's 25, but to have and carry these weapons is extremely offensive to me. When I have forced myself to look at some of these crime scenes following mass shootings, and you think about those little bodies who had no chance against these weapons of war, who were ripped apart by these dangerous weapons of war. Yet, we're here trying to make sure that more of those are in the hands of Tennesseans, not less. Law enforcement, the types of weapons that we're talking about, they don't even have that much firepower. That's what scares me, is that we can be overrun with lawlessness for people that have so many guns. And we've seen this. We saw it at the United States Capitol. We've got rules here where people can't bring guns in. We've tried to ban signs, but we're not banning guns. We're increasing the ability to have guns. I wonder how comfortable anyone on this committee would feel if everyone in the audience in front of us didn't have a sign, but they had a gun. I know I'd be terrified. I wouldn't be sitting here. But that's what you want to have in our society. I'm going to put aside some of the comments you made that I totally disagree with in your remarks. I find to be untrue and offensive. And just say that I hope and pray that we will come to our senses and do everything we can to stop gun violence and mass shootings in our country. The one common denominator with every mass shooting, there's one. It's been blamed on multiple things, but the one commonality is guns. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Fritts, any follow-up, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly, thank you, Representative, for your comments. I would offer just a couple quick things. There's nothing you'll find in this legislation that proliferates firearms. It does proliferate liberty, and that is our responsibility to do that as elected officials. The comment about being overrun with lawlessness, those are some of the cases I have made for what I have seen with my eyes, Representative, at the Texas border, what I've heard from other Americans say. And they have offered they have offered very assertively these words, "It's coming your way." I hope I'm wrong about that. I hope they're wrong about that.
Please refrain from speaking while someone else is speaking. Please. Representative Fritts, you recognize.
I'll close quickly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I hope I'm wrong about that. I hope that they're wrong about that, Representative. But I will not put my citizens at risk of being criminalized without standing up for their rights. I would hope that you would stand up for your people's rights as well.
Representative Powell, you need to follow up. Ma'am?
I'll be standing up for lives before I stand up for rights every day to protect my community. And you keep referencing Texas. This is Tennessee. Thank you.
And thank you for that. Next on the list, I have Representative Grills, Chairman Grills, excuse me.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Be appropriate, I call for previous question.
Very good. Previous question been called. Any objection? Seeing none, all those in favor of sending House Bill 2802 to Criminal Justice Full Committee, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Opposed. Bill moves on.
Look, guys, one person asked.
The roll call, the request for roll call was made by one member. It takes three. That's the rule. It's been the rule. But you can be recorded as a no. So bill moves on to Criminal Justice Full Committee. Thank you. That brings to item 12, House Bill 2508.
Point of order. Point
You got
of
a motion
order.
and a second. I'm coming to you. I'm coming to you. Representative Powell, we're on House Bill 2508.
But I have
Your
a
recommendation.
legislative inquiry for the clerk. Sure. If a motion is made for a point of order and that is not challenged, then how is there not a roll call vote taken? My colleague made a motion for a roll call vote, and I understand, but no one challenged that. No one challenged that.
You want? All right. Leader Lambert, would you like to answer that question?
Mr. Chairman, you and I have been here 12 years, and the good gentleman from Davidson County has been here that same time. The entire time we've been here, it's worked the exact same way. 3 members of the committee can request, not one, or the member who has the bill, the sponsor of the bill, may begin his presentation and ask for that. And I believe that could even carry it up any time to the point where they vote. The sponsor of the legislation can ask with just 1 or 3 members of this committee. I think the chairman explained that earlier, but I figured I'd make another go at it.
Okay. If I could, if we go back and look at the take, I just want to be on record. Right. I yelled roll call. My colleagues here in the front turned around and yelled roll call. So there were 3 people asking for a roll call, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I'd have. Thank you. All right. Item 12, House Bill 2508 by Representative Harris. You're recognized. Do I have a motion in a second? All right, you're probably recognized.
All
right. All right. Here's where we're at. You all have interrupted this committee this entire hour and a half. So, and I understand that, but I need you all to refrain from yelling, speaking out of turn, all that. We have a couple more bills on committee, and then we're going to adjourn. Representative Harris, you're recognized.